My hope for you today is that this information helps you better adapt to the challenges that you're facing on a daily basis and helps you start to think about some of the lessons that we can learn in the long run. Please feel free to ask your questions at any time using the Q&A feature, and we will address them at the end of today's presentation. I will now hand it over to Dr. Josh Wymore. Josh?
Thanks, Brianna. Thanks for hosting me today, and thank you all for coming. I'm excited to have this conversation today. The presentation today is called Navigating the 4 C's of Chaotic Change. And yeah, as Brianna mentioned, it's pretty turbulent times for us. And so much of this, though, comes down to your leadership and your ability to lean into this opportunity, to embrace it, to grow and get better as a result of that. And so rather than opting into like a defensive posture and just trying to make it through it as best you can, like how can we embrace this opportunity and get better result? That's what we want to talk about today. So as Bree mentioned, look forward to your thoughts and your participation. That's going to be a big part of this conversation and what you have to contribute as well. So look forward to those. And just again, thanks again for setting aside time for this conversation. I think it's hugely important, not only for your business, but for you and your family and everyone as well. So what is it that's happening today? Why are we talking about this change? We have a global health crisis, obviously, and what that's led to is a lot of individual challenges and individual changes. Many of you are working from home for the first time, and that's new, with kids running around in the mix. Some folks have lost income, either lost their jobs or they've had their income diminished. Mental health is strained in the middle of that too. We have challenges at the team level as well. So group dynamics are now off. People that used to walk across the hall and talk to someone aren't able to do that anymore. Staff availability may be limited, and so people are picking up different roles than they had before, and that's straining the organization. And then that leads to business challenges as well. So our hours of operation, the kind of services we offer, and even at the basic level, having expenses that continue but no income to come in on the other side. Those are big challenges. Fundamentally, these are leadership and management challenges. How you lead yourself, how you manage yourself, how you lead others and manage others, that's going to be one of the most definitive factors as to how you make it through this crisis, right? Most of us are going to be okay. Physically, we're going to be okay. Many of our businesses are going to be fine. But how you lead is going to determine to what extent you're okay, to what extent your customers' needs are met, to what extent your business thrives or not. And so again, setting aside some time today just to step back and reflect on how am I navigating these challenges right now, and how is it going to impact our community and our customers? That's huge to help you emerge stronger from this. There's an old saying that adversity doesn't build character, it reveals character. And I think that's true, and I think it's true as well for your leadership, that this adversity is going to reveal your level of leadership. And again, hopefully what it reveals is that you are being intentional about this and leading in the right ways. So we're going to talk through the 4 C's of chaotic change today. We're going to fill in these blanks as we go. And if you're interested in this, I'll send out the summary slide to you if you give us your email address at the end. This is our roadmap for the day, or I guess our ocean map for the day. So let's dive in, pun intended. So the first principle, the first C, is that calm encourages calm. You've heard a lot about contagion in the last couple weeks. It's true for diseases and it's true for emotions as well. Emotional contagion is a real thing. If you don't believe me, when we get off this webinar, go start yelling at your spouse and see if they yell back. My bet is that they probably will, or they'll shut down. Either way, you're gonna convey emotion and spread it to the other person. This is true with negative emotions. Negative emotions tend to spread more quickly than positive ones. But it's also true with positive emotions. And I think about this with my daughter. This is my daughter, Joanna. Yes, it's fair to say I think she's pretty adorable. But we'll have this fun game where if I just start whispering to her, she'll start whispering back to me. And, we didn't teach her to do this. We're not making her do this. It's a natural reaction, right? You meet someone else's level of energy, their anxiety level, their excitement level, whatever. The person who has the more aggressive and assertive emotions tend to bring other people's emotions to that level, whether it's up or down. And so, in this situation, what does this mean for you and your team, for your customers, or whatever? If you are calm and if you're conveying that calm to other people, that's going to encourage calm in them as well. It doesn't guarantee it, but it gives you a much more likely chance that they're going to feel like things are going to be okay. We see this from all of our leaders across the board, right? One of the big challenge of leaders is this challenge. Gene Habecker says it this way: one of the key goals of a leader is to absorb chaos, return calm, and provide hope. As a leader, you're kind of like a sponge for the negative emotions in your office. You should be. So when people come and they're frustrated and they're stressed, how do you absorb that chaos into you and say, okay, you know what? Sure, let me hear it. I'll take it in, but then you return calm back to them and provide hope. Hey, here's where we're going. Okay, it's going to be challenging. It's not going to be easy, but we have a plan. We're moving in a certain direction. Calm encourages calm. Emotional contagion is real. Here's a positive example of what this looks like of emotional contagion. So this is a commercial that Coke put together a couple of years ago. They hired an actor to get on a subway and just start laughing. That was the whole point of this experiment. And just watch what happens. I love this. Such a powerful example of the positive impact of emotional contagion. It's kind of weird to me to see people crowded in the subway. And I remember, like, okay, the world has not always been this place where we're socially isolated. This emotional contagion is true. It does spread. How can we do that now from a distance? We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But I encourage you to leverage the power, the positive power of emotional contagion. And this is what this looks like. This is adapted from Daniel Goleman and his concept of emotional intelligence. There's 4 pieces to emotional intelligence, and it ties into this idea of calm, encouraging calm. The first piece is self-awareness, understanding your own emotions. How are you feeling? Why are you feeling that way? The second piece is self-management. So how do I regulate my emotions and impulses? If I'm stressed out, how do I become more calm? The third piece is social awareness, understanding other people's emotions and what's going on with them. And the last piece is relationship management, influencing other people's emotions in a positive way. And so if you're a leader, managing your emotions it's called emotional labor. It takes effort actually to manage your own emotions and to manage how other people perceive your emotions. And so if I'm trying to influence calm, create calm in my team and my organization, that's this last piece, relationship management. And there's 2 ways I can do that. One is I can hide my real emotions and portray what they need to see from me. So I can go cry in the bathroom and come out and put on a brave face. And that can work. Sometimes it's called for. There's no way around that. But some people can see through that, and then they start to get more concerned that you're not being honest with them. The more effective long-term approach is to start from this foundation of self-management, self-awareness, where you are portraying calm because you actually are calm. And so as a leader, so much of our ability to lead well starts with us, right? If you are freaking out about your business, you can put on the best face you want, but people are going to be able to tell, and that's going to translate. That emotional contagion is going to carry down. And so even though it's harder, my challenge to you is to think, how can you really achieve calm yourself so that that conveys naturally over to other people? And what are those practices for you? Is it taking time to meditate every day? Is it reading? Is it reflection, exercise? What is it you can do to manage your own emotions so that you can proactively manage others' emotions from that foundation? This, I think, is a really helpful source of reflection. It's called the Serenity Prayer, and I think this is helpful whether you are religious or not. It says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Oftentimes, one of the greatest sources of frustration or anxiety for us is that we're trying to control stuff we can't actually control. And then one of the greatest lacks of leadership is that we're not controlling the things that we can control. We need that courage to step up, and then wisdom, again, to know the difference. And so these are some questions I want us to take a moment to pause and reflect on. Your comments in the chat. You can raise your hand if you want to share your audio, but think about these 4 questions. What are some practices that can help you maintain peace and perspective, that self-management side of actually achieving calm, so you can encourage calm in others? And then thinking about the Serenity Prayer. What am I trying to control that I can't control? It's creating anxiety for me. What am I not controlling that I should be? Whether that's your habits and routines or circumstances that can't actually help you move the ball forward. And then lastly, what interactions especially call for calm? You think about your team meetings, your customer calls, whatever. What sorts of places should you have your A game on when it comes to creating calm in other people? So leave your comments in the chat. We're going to take a moment and just engage and reflect together here. Jennifer Bozeman says, take deep breaths when tensions are high, controlling her attitude and response. I think that's excellent. Yeah, one of the interesting chemical reactions there is that your brain runs on oxygen, and one of the reasons deep breaths works is it actually reoxygenizes your brain, and so it actually takes those emotions that are flooding your brain when your brain can't think well. It's like giving fuel to that tank that you need. Brianna, getting outside. Yes. Thank God that the weather's warming up. We can do that a little bit together now, or not together, but 6 feet apart from each other. Jessica mentioned not having a regular schedule because you're working from home. So is that something that you can control or something that you can't control, Jessica? And I guess that question's for all of us as you think about your schedules, your daily rhythms. Obviously, that's been thrown off a bit with this corona crisis or corona craziness. But yeah, what of that can you control? Limiting caffeine intake. I think there's some great wisdom in that. Yes, I hope you all are reading the chat here. There's some good things going on here. Yeah, stay in touch with your bosses to ensure you're getting the most important things done, supporting them. We'll talk about some of those same things, both having the clarity there and the connection too. Watching less news. Okay, let me just give a shout out to that person who said watching less news. My wife is pregnant, actually. We're expecting our second child in a couple months. And we've been good with this for, the last couple months. We've been in a pretty good spot. But there came a day where she just had a meltdown. And I'm like, how much Facebook have you been on today? And she had spent a couple hours just reading through everything coming up in the Facebook feed. And I'm like, this is not healthy anymore, right? We know we need to stay at home. We know what we need to do. At this point, we need to just take a hiatus from the news. Yeah. Turning off work, I think that's wise. And self-care, I think, connects to that too. It's hard when you're working from home. If you're not accustomed to it, you're not clocking in and clocking out in the same way naturally, but you can do that, right? Whether it's walking from one part of your house to another. If you're working in your living room, even saying, all right, I'm going to change out of my work clothes for the day and come back and put my comfortable clothes on, and that's going to signal the end of my day. Those sorts of things can help you make that transition and have some more of that work-life balance. Yeah, meditation, that's good. No phone in the morning until after breakfast, prayer, meditation, etc. Yes, let me just emphasize that again. If you're not taking 15 minutes before you get into your day to just pause and reflect on the day and just gather yourself, man, it's huge. It's huge. Yoga, yes. Staying off social media and TV. TV, that's a good one, right? The Tigers can wait, or whatever the thing is going on in Oklahoma. I haven't watched it yet, but yeah, taking some time to read some books, to just be present with your family that's there. Those are things, although family to a certain extent may not create calm, embracing well can do that. Last question here. What are some interactions, especially that call for calm, as you think about things you have coming up that are really going to demand that you bring that peace? What are those for you? Yeah, large group conference calls, for sure. Speaking with clients who are upset, absolutely, absolutely. Just being aware of that, walking into the call before it happens, like getting your head in the right space to think, how can I convey calm in a particular way? Answering questions from public, absolutely. Yeah, good stuff. Remember that quote about absorbing chaos, returning calm, providing hope. That's huge. Awesome. Thank you so much for your interaction. We'll have more of this as we go. A couple of more breaks too. So that's principle one, that calm encourages calm. You can see we filled out the draft. Let's move on to the next one. Principle number two, how do you navigate chaotic change? Well, you got to choose to change. If you've ever heard somebody called a dinosaur, you know that that's a pejorative term now. It means either that you're really old or you're old fashioned, right? Like, oh, that guy's a dinosaur. Oh my gosh, he still uses a flip phone or whatever. If we think about this, we were having this conversation like 100 million years ago. Dinosaur is probably like the world's greatest compliment. Like, oh my gosh, did you see Jack? He killed that presentation. That dude's a dinosaur, right? But obviously a lot has changed in the last 100 million years. Dinosaurs don't exist anymore. And they don't exist anymore because they did not adapt to a huge meteor coming down and covering the earth in this cloud of soot or whatever. So yeah, the question is though, are you a mouse or are you a dinosaur? Mouse is adapted, right? We still have mice. You think about evolution, we got here because ancestors adapted, dinosaurs didn't. And so I think so many of us, we kind of adopt the motto of the dinosaur, that only the strong survive. It's about, just being perseverant and being tough. And there's some truth to that for sure. But when you think about this in a lot of dinosaurs, it's actually those that adapt best to their new environment that survive, right? When your resources that you're used to having aren't there anymore, and you can't find toilet paper at the grocery store anymore, well, you're going to die because you can't find toilet paper, and you get diphtheria or whatever you get from not having good sanitation. Or do you find a way to adapt? It's so much about adaptation. It's true for us in our business. It's true for us individually as well. So the question for you is, as you think about the situation you're in now, have you chosen to change? Have you decided to say, like, you know what, I'm not just gonna like try and do business as usual and then hope it just goes back? Or are you saying, let's find some ways to embrace this and figure out how we can get better as a result of this? If you're just trying to wait this out and you're not trying to get great at this new life, you are really going to struggle. And that says something about you and about your business as well. Fortunately, I think there's some really good examples of organizations that have changed well in the midst of adversity. 3M, I think, is an incredible story. I don't know if you know what 3M stands for, but there actually are 3 M's in their name. It stands for Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing Company. Okay, maybe that's a surprise to you. It surprised me when I first heard it. I think of 3M as like helping me stick pictures to the wall or things like that. But they started off mining a mineral called corundum in Minnesota, and it didn't work out at all. They started this mine and they got this inferior mineral called anorthosite, And they didn't know what to do with it. They were losing money, their business wasn't working. And so they pivoted and said, well, you know what, we can use this kind of gritty mineral to make sandpaper. Maybe that'll work. And so they started making sandpaper, sold sandpaper, and that helped them turn their first profit and keep their business going. Fast forward a few years, one of their engineers is at a auto body shop, and he overhears these guys who are painting a car complaining about how this glue that they're trying to use to hold stuff on doesn't really work very well. And so he says, hey, you know what, I think I could go back to my shop and I could make you some tape that would probably work pretty well. And he made an early version of masking tape that really hadn't existed anymore. That innovation led to Scotch tape, which became their landmark product. Now, every year, 3M sells enough Scotch tape to wrap around the world 165 times. Okay, it's a lot of tape. This company started off 3M, Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing, went to sandpaper, and then Scotch tape and adhesives and all number of things. And they're now one of the most innovative companies, and started off in this moment of adversity where they couldn't figure out their business. They adapted and changed, and as a result, they're a really healthy company now. You know, another example is Ford. You good Michigan probably know the story of Ford and Willow Run, but during World War II, Ford stopped its automobile production and shifted to producing airplanes for the war effort. They built Willow Run, this massive factory outside of Ypsilanti, to do this and to produce B-24 bombers. And previously, people thought it was not possible to produce B-24 bombers on an assembly line. They were just too big. But they had this like mile-long assembly line. They built the biggest indoor factory in the world to do this. And at their peak, they were producing a B-24 every 63 minutes, rolling them off the line. Ford was given a distinguished medal for his contributions to this effort. And in terms of business impact, the amount of business they produced from 1941 to 1945 was $3.96 billion in business, which in 2020 dollars is about 56.9 billion. I think that's pretty good for a wartime adaptation to be able to produce that number of machines and help the war effort as well. An incredible pivot for a company during a really difficult time. There were some other ancillary benefits as well. You probably know the Rosie the Riveter campaign. A huge part of this came out of Ford, and it's debatable whether or not the actual Rosie that's the inspiration for this actually worked at Ford. She may have worked there, but Ford had previously been really resistant to including women in their workforce, and out of necessity they did, and about 30% of their workforce was women throughout this effort. And they were getting equal pay for equal work throughout this process. I-94 was built to connect Detroit to this factory, so that was a cool infrastructure innovation that came as a result of that. And again, just a great government-private partnership that enabled them to thrive, enabled the company to survive, and I think is a model for so many of our businesses as we think about banding together to support our community in this. I'm seeing some comments pop up here. Yeah, now Willow Run's being used to test autonomous vehicles. So it's interesting that, just the foundation that was laid. Ford ended up getting rid of it later on down the road, but it still laid the foundation for other innovations to come. I think one of the most important things, though, in this is not even just about your business. It's about who you are. As I think about how you are navigating this change, my question is, are you becoming a better person as a result of this? Are these challenges forcing you to become more adaptable and flexible? Are you embracing that? Or are you just trying to hunker down and just make it through? Again, as Bree mentioned early on in the conversation, change is the only constant. So this is not a new thing. Maybe the scale's a little bit different, but this is a chance for you to either embrace this opportunity to become more adaptable, to strengthen that muscle of being adaptable and seeking out change, or it's a chance for you to become more set in your ways and just trying to fight against it. And so I want you to ask yourself, are the choices you're making today helping you become more flexible, more creative, more adaptive, or not? And so again, we want to pause just for some reflection and some interaction here. And so a few questions I want you to contemplate. And again, enter in the chat or raise your hand if you want to talk. What areas are you being resistant or reactive to change where you could be proactive? Okay, sure, you got to work from home and you can do that dragging your feet, but where can you take the lead, be proactive and trying to get better and trying to do things better as a result? Second, how can you use your talents and your resources to solve new problems? Maybe that's an individual level. Maybe you have a new role to take on in your organization, or maybe it's at the business level that your resources can be used a little bit differently. United right now is using its empty planes because people aren't flying to shuttle cargo back and forth, like serving like as a backup FedEx to help out the government. That's a way to keep their business alive and meet the economy. What are some things you could do to become more adaptable with the resources you have? And then lastly, thinking about the personal impact for you, how will becoming more adaptable in this situation help you become better at your job, better in your relationships, both now in this moment, but also lay the foundation for that down the future? So let's take a few minutes and reflect. Again, raise your hand or add some comments in the chat. Yeah, I love Jennifer's comment about thinking outside the box, things that you haven't tried before. This was it's funny that I'm doing this webinar now because Brianna and I had talked about doing some webinars together this fall, and with the change of schedule and everything going on in the world, it accelerated our timeline a bit to do this. And this is something that I've not done a ton of, and I know the chamber is doing more of, but a chance to experiment with some things that could become the new normal for a lot of organizations. Yeah, Gabriella mentioned learning a new skill sets. Yeah, that's awesome. So many people have posted things about learning how to do Zoom meetings for the first time or go-to meetings or whatever, and just navigating the situations. It's been fun to see them stretch in that way. Yeah, Regina, good comment. Limited resources and unpredictable events, it's hard to know what to invest in. We're going to talk about that in our next point. So you're perfect tee up for where we're going to go from there. Didn't offer webinars at all 2 weeks ago. Stephen, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that's tremendous. New problems to solve. All right, we'll keep moving forward here. So principle number 2, choose to change. Be not a dinosaur. Think about the examples of 3M and Ford, and just that growth mindset for you individually. How can you get better as a result of this process? Principle number 3, clarity is king. This is the third C, clarity. Clarity is so huge, especially clarity of purpose. Who are we? What are we doing? Why is it important? So think about this. Let's say, fast forward a few months, you go back to business as usual. You come back into the office now and you're excited to be there. And your boss says, hey, so excited that you're back. Josh, I got a new task for you today. I'd like you to get on this hamster wheel we have in the corner and just run for a couple hours. All right? Take care. How would you respond to that? Once you realize it wasn't a joke, you'd probably be pretty ticked. You might even quit. It feels like some sort of like inhumane punishment, right? To just tell you to get in a hamster wheel and run around for no reason. But if you came back again, same situation, and your boss said, hey, you know what, we've been out of the office for a while. I don't know about you, but I didn't get much chance to exercise. I think it'd be great team bonding and great overall well-being for us to start training for a marathon together. Our whole team to try and run a full marathon in 6 weeks. So we're going to set aside time in your workday to run every day. Maybe you hear that and you're like, you're still, okay, not my cup of tea, I'm walking away. But for some of you might think, hey, you know what, that's kind of cool, like to be proactive and have a chance to bond as a team. Like, yeah, I could get into that. Or a third scenario, you come into work and your building is full of killer bees and you got to sprint to get out of there. Now you're very motivated to avoid these bees on your run. All through these situations, the difference is clarity of purpose, right? You're being told to do something and not told why. It feels strange and inhumane. If you've got a reason for it, then all of a sudden your perspective shifts, and you got a really good reason, then you're very motivated. That clarity around what you need to do and why you need to do it is essential in the middle of chaos. It's perhaps the most important ingredient. Calm encourages calm. That emotional contagion is huge. But when I have clarity around where we're going and why we're going there, that is such a producer of calm as well. Nietzsche says, he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Okay, if I know why I'm doing what I'm doing, I can deal with the difficulty of that. If I know why I'm running, I can deal with my muscles burning and my chest aching and stuff like that. But if it feels pointless, I'm going to lose hope. I'm going to despair pretty quickly. As I think about the most pernicious outcomes of this disease and this pandemic, I think some people, will be affected adversely from a health perspective, and some people will lose their lives. But I think, gosh, the despair and the breakdown of our society, and the breakdown of our organizations, that's probably the most pernicious threat in the midst of this. I think about all the challenges we're asking people to take on, to stay at home and not talk to other people. You need some really good why behind that to be able to do that. Some companies are trying to protect jobs, and so they're asking people to take voluntary pay cuts so they can preserve everyone's jobs rather than just a few. And again, if that's conveyed, the purpose behind that is conveyed as, well, let's just do it, to meet our bottom line. That's one thing. But if it's, hey, if we can all get in this together, we can all be better off. This is the reason why. Man, that can be really powerful. And this sense of clarity, this fades. You've got to continue to do this over and over again. Zig Ziglar has this funny quote. He says, people complain that motivation doesn't last. Well, neither does bathing. That's why we recommend it daily. Get this daily motivation. And I think the same is true for clarity as well. If you're a leader, your team needs clarity from you every single day. One great example of this is an organization I studied when I was doing my dissertation. This college that needed to make some really difficult program cuts and budget cuts. And so that's always a difficult situation. It was in the middle of the 2008 recession. And so they were trying to navigate that and get their people on board without having an outright riot, and just try and make those decisions with wisdom as well. And so the president and the provost laid out very clearly, here's the criteria we're going to use when we're evaluating every program. Okay, this is the scorecard we're going to use, and this is how we're going to make decisions. And they analyzed every program, and then they shared the data with everybody, so everybody could see where everybody scored. And the clarity around why they were doing what they're doing and how the decisions are going to be made, it was so clear that one of the people on the committee making decisions about which programs to cut said, hey, you know what, after looking at this, I think you need to cut my department. It seems like it's obviously the right thing to do. And I think, oh my gosh, how foreign of a concept is that someone would step up and have that team mentality. And I think that says a lot about the individual, but it also says a lot about the leaders, that they framed the issue so well that it was so clear cut what needed to happen. And I hope that many of your organizations are not facing this challenge where you have to make cuts, but if you do, if you've got anything difficult people need to endure, how can you make the purpose and the parameters so clear that everybody understands how you got from point A to point B? We often don't trust our people. We keep them in the dark because we're afraid that they'll freak out if we tell them what's going on. But man, when you treat people like adults and again, give them the clarity, help them to think like you're thinking, then they're going to arrive at a lot of the same conclusions you're going to arrive at as well. Clarity brings simplicity and it brings action. And during crisis, one of the things that just doesn't happen is that simplicity and action. We're not sure what to believe, we're not sure what to do, and that paralyzes us. And action is so important. You got to have clarity. And so how is it that you can get this? Henry David Thoreau just says, simplify. In your life, in your leadership, how can you get rid of things that are not the priority, whether it's processes or projects or meetings, whatever, like what is the simplest possible way to think about our work? One of his peers, kind of jabbingly says, I think one simplify would have sufficed, like, okay, we can be even simpler than just simplify. How about just simplify? Really boil this down to its essence. And Einstein famously says, everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. And so the challenge for you as a leader is to think, in my business, what is the real essential stuff that has to happen every day? How can I make that so clear and so simple? Not too simple where we're not doing what we need to do, but what is the real heart of it? And I would challenge you, whether it's your business mission statement, your priorities during this time, whatever, if you can't say it in one sentence, you probably don't understand it. That's the measure of true understanding is, can I say it in a really simple way? If you've got to tell me a lot of jargon and you got to get into your 5-page plan, I don't think you really understand what drives your business and what the real priority is. If you can say it in one sentence, though, if you can simplify, then that tells me you know what is most important. You have clarity. And if you have clarity, then I can get clarity too. Think about this. My high school football team played on a pretty good high school team. And we had like 12 plays the entire year. It was a very simple playbook, but we executed those plays really well. And I was kind of cocky in high school. And so, one particular game, I went up and I got to the line of scrimmage and I told the other team before I snapped the ball what we were going to do. Because I'm like, we're just going to dominate you in the middle of this. It worked out okay, not as well as I hoped. I didn't do it again after that. But when you think about this principle of strategy versus execution, oftentimes we spend a lot of time developing what we think is the right strategy, a really nuanced, complex strategy, and we spend almost no time on execution, on doing it. But the truth is that an average plan, a simple plan with excellent execution, beats a elaborate strategy with only average execution. Finding a simple thing you can do to move the ball forward and actually doing it really well, that's way more effective than spending all kinds of time trying to, figure things out and get the perfect plan. Teddy Roosevelt said it this way, in any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing is the wrong thing. And the worst thing you can do is nothing. But for so many of us, we're doing nothing, right? We are paralyzed because we don't have enough information. Everything's changing. We're not sure where to go. Gosh, our business is changing. Yeah, that's all true. That's all true. But what is the simple next right thing you can do? I think I just quoted Frozen 2. If you've seen Frozen 2, that was an accident. What is the next right thing, right? What is the next step you should take? Doesn't have to be perfect, but taking an action, unifying your team around any plan is going to be better than nothing. One really practical piece of advice for this is to pair up, not down. And what do I mean by that? Well, oftentimes when you've got like a 40-hour week, and all of a sudden, you're working from home, and so you're only able to do like 30 hours because you've got childcare or whatever. Our natural tendency is to start shaving stuff off one at a time, like drop an hour here, drop 2 hours there to try and pare things down. But you die this death of 1,000 small deaths as you do that. I think it's really hard to make those decisions. Instead, start by getting to the core and say, all right, let's say instead of 40 hours a week, I've got 1 hour this week. What would I do in my 1 hour this week that would be the most important thing to do? And once you figure that out, say, okay, now if I had 2 hours, if I had 3 hours, and start to pair up, to add things on, that keeps you focused on the core of what's really most essential instead of just whittling things away. Again, if you can't simplify your week down to that 1 hour to say what's really the most important, then again, maybe you don't know what is really most important in your job. So to help you with that practice, do it radically, pair up, start with just an hour, start with 2 hours in a day or a week, and then pair up from there rather than trying to pare down. So in a practical way of doing this, when you make your to-do list for the day, make 2 lists. One is what has to happen today. The essentials, like I cannot finish my day without this happening. And the second list is what's bonus. If I have time after this stuff gets done, what can I do after that? That'll help you understand what the most important priorities are, make sure those get done, and then you build some momentum and you can tackle those extra things as you have time. So again, we're going to pause to reflect a bit. Did you think about this? Do you know what you need to be doing every day? What's on that essential list and what's on the bonus list? And second question, is there any chance that people in your organization have any doubts about that for themselves? Did they know what they should be doing? What is really most important if they only had an hour in the day? And then lastly, do your customers know what to expect of you? If everything is changing, can you give them a really simple message and a really clear call to action of how they can engage with you, how they can support you, how they can still get services from you, whatever it is. Do they know understand things with this level of clarity as well? So let's take a minute, and again, enter your chats, raise your hand if you want to share something. Emily, thanks for your honesty in the middle of that. Yeah, it's a great point, Brianna, that if you don't have clarity, to ask for clarity. That's one of the most powerful examples, I think, of leading upward, of helping your leaders know what you need from them. It's easy for us. We're not omniscient, right? We don't know what the other person has going on in their mind. And so saying, I have this need, can you help me with that? It's a really, really powerful statement. Tracy, great point about just communicating with your customers. I think particularly when you show, again, like you said, that you care, right? You're not just getting a hold of them to try and pitch a service, but that you really want to meet their needs. I think that's just really powerful. And that is a great tee up for our last thing coming here in just a second. And to your point, Brianna, again, about having understanding of what you can control and how that creates clarity. One of the things you can do if you don't feel like you have clarity is to make your own list of what you need to be doing every day from what you understand, and then sharing that with your boss and say, hey, just so you know, these are the priorities I'm working on. Do you think these are the most important things? And if your leader doesn't have an idea of what you should be working on, that brings a moment of clarity for them to say, okay, wow, they're saying this, but I think it should be something else. Now we have fodder for a conversation. It's much easier to critique someone's plan than to create a plan from scratch. And so if you will offer that first draft up, that can really help your team move the ball forward. A couple of good examples of this, of creative ways to engage and support your business. I saw an ad from an improv theater in Chicago that shut down now because of this crisis. And so they're not bringing in any revenue. But what they did is they said, we're going to quarantine like 10 of our performers, and they're going to, over the course of 5 days, like write and produce a show and live stream it. So if you want to be a part of that and you want to support our theater, you can buy tickets and live stream this show online. And they're going to document their process as they go. And I thought it was a really cool way of, again, playing within the rules of what they need to do, but also still engaging with their customers in a unique way. You know, restaurants saying, buy gift cards from us now, and then, come pick up things from us later. Great examples of clear direction that businesses have given to their customers of how to engage. All right, so that the third C, clarity is king. Ask yourself, are we in a hamster wheel or in a marathon? Do people know why we're doing what we're doing? How can you simplify things down? Any decision is better than no decision. Pair up, not down. So the last C is that connection is critical. This is an innate human desire, this desire for connection. This does not go on vacation whenever a pandemic hits. If you've been around a new mom in the last decade or so, you probably heard about this idea of skin to skin, how they bond with their babies right after birth. And that's true not just for moms. It's not just a human need for babies, but it's true for all primates, actually. They have this need for connection. There's a famous experiment from the 1960s by a guy named Harry Harlow. And he put these two monkeys, mother monkeys, in a cage with this rhesus monkey. And you can see the one on the left is just this kind of wire cage monkey. And the one on the right is covered in cloth. It's really soft. Well, the one on the left actually gives milk and nourishes the monkey. And the one on the right doesn't do anything. It's just soft. And what they were testing is, will the monkey be drawn to the mom that gives milk or the one that's comfortable? And what's interesting is the monkey would run to the one that gave milk, get its milk, and then run to the mom that was comfortable and stay there. That monkey was a source of comfort for him. And then when the monkey's in a new space, a strange environment, if the wire mom was in there, didn't have any effect on the monkey. But if the cloth covered mom was there, all of a sudden the monkey had more confidence, could cling to its mom and kind of branch out and explore. Again, just this need for comfort and connection, it's innate in us as primates. And I'm not arguing that you are, your employees' moms or your teammates' moms, but I'm trying to argue that this need for connection is just essential to who we are. It's not just enough to pay our people; they need connection from us as well. This mom that gave milk, again, that wasn't enough. And with so many of us now working remotely, so much of the natural things that we relied on to create this sense of connection and bonding are gone out the window. So how can you still create this connection so that people feel valued and feel bonded? Because the truth is that our sense of connection shapes how we do our job. A great example of this is an Israeli radiologist named Dr. Turner. He was thinking about this process of examining patient scans, and it's very disconnected from the patient, right? You never meet this person, you just get a scan, you look at it and try and figure out what's wrong with it. And so his experiment was he started attaching pictures of the patient to the scans to see how it impacted how the radiologist did their work. And as you can imagine, it changed it quite a bit. Radiologists that had the patient picture, they found more issues within the scans. They wrote longer reports, and they felt more connected when they saw that person's face. And that's just such a small thing, but in a space where they recognized disconnection was a problem, even though it was the norm, they found a way to increase their quality by a really small step of creating that connection. Now that you're working remotely, if you've been used to working face to face, how do you maintain that sense of connection? Video calls are great because you see those faces. You're bringing your kids or dogs into the picture, or dressing up in funny ways, whatever. Like, how do you create some emotional bonding moments, even with you being distributed? I think there's some really cool examples from this around the world. One's from Spain. You probably saw this. This guy leading exercises on the rooftops for people that are quarantined. You probably also saw the example of in Italy, people singing, gathering in the streets. Just a great example of people trying to find creative ways to connect even while being apart. Personally, if I wanted to hear someone clanging pots and pans, I would just go in the kitchen with my toddler. But I love that people are reaching out to bond in this way. So what is it that you're doing? I've heard of friends who are having like virtual dance parties or virtual karaoke parties or watching Netflix live. There's a cool sports team that had to shut down their season, and so they have all these paid staff. They still want to do something and stay connected to their community, and their whole purpose as a sports team a regional sports team is to bring the community together. And so they started going out to volunteer in hospitals, to move equipment and cook, and just use their skills and gifts and resources to still connect to the community and help them thrive. So what is it that you can do under these circumstances to maintain this connection? I think the 5 languages of appreciation, Chapman gives us some practical ways to think about this. He argues that there are 5 different fundamental needs people have. They value gifts, acts of service, words of affirmation, physical touch, and quality time. And so physical touch is obviously a little bit more challenging in this season, but with the others in particular, what is their particular language of appreciation, and how can you express that during this season? What's a gift you could send them, or something you could do to serve them, or just a word of encouragement you can offer? We have to up our game when it comes to connection right now. We just have to, because quite honestly, most of our businesses weren't great at that to begin with, and it's not top of mind for most people now, and it's not easy right now. And so how do you over communicate, over contact your people, not to check up on them and like hold them accountable for stuff and just make sure they're doing their job, as much as it is to say, hey, how are you doing? You know, what's going on in your life? What's something funny that happened with your kids today? Yeah, what can I do to support you today? You're doing a great job. Even just scheduling Zoom calls to hang out with your team, because you don't have those opportunities naturally anymore. What can you do to appreciate your team? And so again, our last set of questions here. Think about this strategically. Who should be on your to connect with list? Is it a teammate? Is it a customer? An elderly relative? Who's on that list of people that you should be reaching out to right now? What are their unique connection needs? Think about the five languages of appreciation. What's something I could do to really show them that I care about them? And then how can I connect with them in creative ways? And if you're already doing something, I'd love to hear about this in the chats, ways that you're doing things that are out of the box to, again, just stay connected, build rapport as a team. Think about this as a time to actually build more rapport, greater connection, rather than losing it. What would you do if you were trying to do that? So take a moment, reflect, again, add your comments in the chat. Group chat with daily positive thoughts and encouragements. That's great. Snail mail. That's good. Although if my wife got snail mail, she'd be kind of freaked out that it had coronavirus on it. So if you find a way to send a like disease-proof letter, let me know. Yeah, snail mail. Virtual happy hours. Nice. Taking time to talk about personal issues. That's great. Yeah, I found something similar that with my peers or colleagues or whatever, about the first 5 or 10 minutes of any call tends to be, yeah, what's going on in your world? How are things going? Especially with, when I'm talking to clients who are in different parts of the US, we're all experiencing things differently. And just taking a moment to humanize that, I think can be really, really huge. Dress up for team meetings. Yes, that's awesome. Super. Well, here's our summary for today. And again, I mentioned if you want this, you can leave your email address in the chat and we'll send this out. It's a good summary you hang up on your wall, or again, just remember to think through these principles, the examples that we talked about. Examples for this one, the radiologist staying connected with pictures, or singing in the streets, exercises on the rooftops, or specifically the 5 languages of appreciation and how you can leverage those. So yeah, leave your email address. We'll send you that. And as well, if you're interested, if you leave your email address, and add you to my podcast list. So this sends out a 3-minute video every couple weeks, every couple Mondays, with just a short idea to ignite your life and leadership, something really practical you can do to help you get better and help you live and work more effectively as well. From that, that wraps up my session, and I'll turn it over to Brianna.
Thank you so much, Josh. I really liked when you said we have to up our game when it comes to connection, and it really made me think of how we just have to up our game, period. We will probably never have time like this again in our lives. So I hope that everyone on the call and everyone who watches this recording really finds ways to make your own time valuable and sharpen your own saw by strengthening the areas that you've been pushing off or that you just feel like you haven't had time to do so in the past. Thank you again, Josh, so much. That was great. We would love to catch your feedback before you leave. So I'm also going to be dropping a link to a feedback survey in the comments. At this time, we'll go ahead and open it up for questions. Since we have been using the chat feature primarily, please leave your questions in the chat, or if you're watching on Facebook, feel free to leave them in the comments right now. So we will pause for some of those questions to come through. And while we're waiting for some of those, I just want to let you guys know that up next in our webinar series today at 2 p.m., we'll have the COVID-19 Business Impact question and answer session. So we'll have a few panelists from all over our organizations there to answer any questions that you guys have. So come back and join us at 2. Again, like I said earlier, connecting with you guys virtually has really helped us keep some sense of normalcy. So we love to see you guys on there whenever we can. Let me just pop over to Facebook real quick to make sure we don't have any questions there. Nothing there. Anything from the Zoom group? Okay, well, we will linger around for a couple of minutes if you guys do have questions. But again, thanks so much for joining us today. All of this information will be uploaded to our website later this afternoon.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thanks, Regina. All right, looks like we're all set. Thank you guys again. We'll see you next time.
Take care.